Last weekend we were going to try and think about people and see if they show. All right, here's the follow-up. A week ago or so, I told people to try an experiment to see if we live in a simulation. And the experiment went like this. You would try to program the simulation to produce somebody that you hoped you would run into or they would contact you. Now, how many people ran into somebody in the past week that they were trying to manifest? Over on the Locals platform, people are saying that it did work in some cases. Quite a few people. Somebody had 2. Holy cow. Apparently it worked for a lot of people. Wow. If you were a sim, what would you be able to think about? Why would you be able to think about a sim? Because we would be programmed to be like people. See, it would be really hard to program us to be like people, like the people who created the simulation, without giving us the power to figure out we're in a simulation. That would be very tricky to program. Because even if you gave like some specific code, you will not realize this. But if you've also given code that the brain will evolve and be able to look at everything from different points of view, different frames and interpretations, if you've written it that way, I think it thwarts your attempt to block its knowledge over time. It becomes too big and can look at things from too many directions to be prohibited from seeing the reality over time. Just speculation. All right. Our subroutines keep us blind. Maybe. And it could be that some people can get past the programming and some can't. The people who created this simulation are in the future, according to you. No, not necessarily. Every explanation of existence is irrelevant. Not if it changes how you act in the present. Knowing what reality is useless unless it changes your behavior. But knowing that you live in a simulation could actually change your behavior, because it at least opens the possibility that you can program it. The simulating computer must be exactly the size of the universe. Incorrect. So one of the reasons that people think we can't be a simulation is that the calculations would be too big. You can't keep track of everything happening at the same time. But that's not what's happening. You can see it yourself. You can see that my movie and your movie don't match. And that's so the system doesn't need to keep the story straight in the past. The simulation only needs to patch things over when there's a problem. So if you and I meet and we both have a different story of what happened last week, the simulation just has to give us a reason to be okay with that difference. So you and I meet and say, last week when that thing happened, and I say, that thing didn't happen. I was there too. I'd remember it if it happened. And the other person says, well, I was there too, and I do remember it happened. Now the simulation would say that both of them are right, because they're living in their own interpretation. But the simulation doesn't need to have a real past. It can just say, yeah, your memory is fine. We'll go with your memory. and then it can shortcut everything. It can just say, yeah, if you think it's true, it's true. That's good. Whatever you want to remember, that's fine. And then it can just delete all the actual history. It doesn't need it. Now, what about what is beneath the ground in your backyard? If we're a simulation, the simulation has not decided what's beneath the ground if I were to dig with a shovel. That the simulation would fill it in as I'm digging it out. In other words, there's nothing under my lawn if nobody's ever seen it, because it doesn't need to be there. It appears on demand. So if that's the case, then you don't need the biggest computer. You just need one that knows how to make shortcuts. Yes, and actually it's true. If the computer needed to be the size of the universe, that does not make it impossible. That's correct. It might not even make it impractical for some higher level society that could make a computer as big as, or at least as complex as the universe. The computer wouldn't have to be as big as the universe. It would have to be as complex, right? Is that right? I think I'm reading too much into it. Yeah, gaslighting has something to do with this. There's definitely a correlation. You reading the follow-up confirms the simulation. Were miracles just rewrites of simulation code? They were probably just false memory or stories that didn't really happen. It's like saying the smartest guy has the biggest head. Yeah. Every religion is more believable than this simulation stuff. Is it? So yeah, the point of the simulation argument is that it's 1 trillion times more likely than the next best explanation, based on logic. And nobody's ever assailed the logic of it. That doesn't mean it's true. It could be that all interpretations are untrue. But it is 1 trillion times more likely, because for every real world, there will be lots of simulations. So that part, I don't think anybody who works in AI or computing doubts the fact there will be lots of simulations at some point. Who created the creator of the simulation? I can answer that. Would you like me to answer? So the question is, if God created us, who created God? Or if we're a simulation created by somebody, who created them? It's a good question, right? I actually know the answer to that, because it's obvious. You ready? Time is circular. There can't be a beginning. So remember, every time you say, but if this started this, what's before that? And then what's before that? What's before that? The question of what's before that to infinity is nonsense. The only explanation is that time is circular, or it repeats, right? Because if it didn't repeat, nothing would work. Like, it explains everything, and if you take that away, everything is nonsense. It's got to be some kind of a loop. So we should have been here before, or we will be here again. Everything that can happen will happen eventually. All right. The existence of infinite simulations, isn't that illogical? No, not infinite simulations, just lots of them. You don't need any infinity for the simulation theory. Or you just don't understand it, yeah. But then the creators of the simulations are really in the future. Let me answer that. So the idea that there will at some point, there will be way more simulations than there are people, does take into account that some of those simulations, or even most of them, might be in the future. But it is impossible to know whether you're at the beginning and the very first simulation, or you're somewhere in the middle. What are the odds that you're at the beginning and you're like the one, the first one, versus one of the trillions that we know will exist logically? Logically, there's almost a vanishingly small chance you're the first one, like 1 trillion to 1 or something like that. The odds are you're just an average simulated world, just like other ones. How many of you joined me last night in the man cave, where I had a spontaneous late night session that I think went pretty well, actually. It went better than I thought. It is really amazing. So if you're not part of the local subscription service, you don't know how awesome the experience is. So the reason that I do some of the live streams spontaneously is that the back and forth of it is just good fun. Let's see. But the parent reality makes sense, maybe. All right, just looking at your comments for a while. Everything becomes meaningless if it's a simulation. There's no love, there's no hope, there's nothing. How is that different than now? How's that different? I mean, ultimately you die. I mean, under most assumptions you die. So nothing you do makes a difference to you. You'll be dead. But we are designed to care about our legacy and our genes and our, carrying our souls forward in some form. So I think I would think that the simulation is simply an impulse that we can't deny. We just want to do it. So there doesn't need to be a reason. We just want to do it. Why was the simulation created? I'll give you my hypothesis. My hypothesis for the simulation is that we are A/B testing solutions for some higher level intelligence. And the reason I think this is that people have themes of problems in their life. I've told you one of my themes is I have continuous water leaks in every house, in every situation. I even had a water leak when I went camping. True story. It was a Cub Scout, and I went on a camping trip, and it rained, and the tent flooded. Everywhere I go, there's a flooding water leak problem. So it almost seems as if I've been designed by some kind of water leak plumbing company in the future, or the present, I guess, to try be in a bunch of different situations and figure out how I deal with it. There are about 3 other situations where no matter how quickly I solve a problem, the same type of problem backfills it. Anybody have that? Where there's a kind of problem that keeps bothering you, but not other people. And you can't figure out why. It doesn't seem to be something about your situation. It does just seem to be a coincidence. And then as soon as you solve one, the new one appears. Have you noticed that? Am I the only one that has that experience all through my life? The moment I solve it, a new one appears. It's happening right now. Like there's a thing that I deal with every week forever. There is an obstacle that pops up that tries to prevent me from something I want. And as soon as I solve an obstacle, a new one appears that definitely wasn't there before. Like it wasn't there and I didn't notice. It just wasn't there. And it's been happening for 50 years. For 50 years, I keep solving a problem and it backfills with a different kind of problem for no reason. It completely is random as far as I can tell. For 50 years. Consistently. I can't, I don't want to get into what it is, but it's hard to imagine that's a coincidence. Everything's all about you. No, my theory is that you would all be testing things, except for the NPCs. Yeah. So nothing matters, I get it. Maybe. When I was interacting with Elon Musk on Twitter about human consciousness the other day, and he has an assumption that expanding the light of human consciousness to the point where we can understand our reality is sort of important and necessary. And I say, why? Why is it important and why is it even necessary? I mean, we did fine until now. We survived as a species. We dominate the world. I thought we did okay without understanding anything. So I'm not sure that evolution cares if we understand anything. It only cares if we survive, and we seem to be pretty good at it. So I would question that purpose. At the same time, I'm totally in favor of doing it, by the way. I'm totally in favor of expanding our consciousness and learning what we can. But I don't know the reason. I think I just have an impulse for it. So I feel as though, would you like to know the meaning of life? I figured it out a few years ago. There's an actual mechanical meaning of life, like scientific. I can explain it to you, and you will know the meaning of life. Now, stop me if I've done this before. But by the way, I'm completely confident about this. The meaning of life is what you'll feel when your actions in your life are compatible with your evolutionary demands. In other words, evolution makes you want to have a baby. It makes you want to reproduce. Now, let me quickly add lots of exceptions. Can I make a request? I'm going to make a request. I would like you to stop saying 42. Because we all get it. We get the reference. But I'm going to ask you to stop doing it. Because that's in my category with, references about Soylent Green. And, if every single time somebody talks about the nature of the universe and somebody says 42 in the comments, and I don't know if I've ever been in a conversation where it didn't happen, I'm just going to ask you, because we've all seen it. Now we've all seen it. Okay, it's not additive, that's all. It's a reference to a Douglas Adams book where 42 is the answer to the universe, but it's a meaningless answer. Here's the meaning of the meaning of life. As I said, if you were born with a genetic impulse to have children, then that's your meaning of life. If you're born without that impulse, and I think a lot of people are, then that's not their meaning of life. But they may need to be compatible with it, because they may still have an evolutionary drive. So take me, for example. Presumably, I have some evolutionary, desire to reproduce. But I've never really felt it much, right? It hasn't been like driving my life or anything. In fact, I haven't. So, but here's what I do feel. I do feel an evolutionary desire to take care of the people who are already here. Take care of the tribe, take care of any children who don't have enough resources and stuff. Now, I think that is compatible with my evolutionary design. Would you agree? In all likelihood, I'm right on point for my evolutionary requirement, because I took care of myself. I got a good job and made some money. And then as soon as I became like a tribal elder, which I am now, I'm like a tribal elder, then I started turning my attentions back to, helping the people who are younger and helping the tribe. Now, to me, that feels completely aligned with my biological design. And then it makes me feel like I'm right in the middle of the meaning of life. Now, you can say to yourself, yeah, but everybody dies and there's no reason. You can't give me like a logical reason why that makes you feel good. And the answer is, I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to give you any logical reasons. I'm just telling you what's what. And what's what is this. If I do the things that are compatible with my biology, the mandates of my biology, so long as I'm not, breaking a law or something. But if I'm compatible with the mandates of my biology, I completely feel that I have meaning in my life. The moment I depart from my biological design, I get unhappy. Unfortunately, that includes going on vacation. When I'm on vacation, I'm outside my biological feeling of meaning, because all I'm doing is wasting time. When I'm sitting on the beach, the whole time I think, there's no meaning to this. It felt good for a few minutes. I like the sun, but there's no meaning to it. I'll never think back to this with a happy thought, even though I like it. I like sitting on the beach. I like the sun. I love the sand, walking in the water, all great things. But there is no meaning there. It's just me enjoying myself. So if you want to feel that you have meaning in life, figure out what your biological imperatives are. It might be you having children. So, get your dating game up or whatever it takes. But it might not be. It might be like mine, where you still need to feel like take care of yourself and then become a tribal elder or take care of other people. Or you might be a warrior. Let me speculate a little further. You might be born just to be a fighter. Let's say you're a guy, especially. Maybe that's what you should be. Maybe that's what you should be. Maybe you need to join the Marines. Maybe you need to be a cop. Because some people just have a different genetic upbringing or genetic composition. Now, I don't feel like I'm that person. I don't feel like I was born to be in physical altercations. I do feel like I was born to be in the fight, but in the way that I fight best. So, it got a little bit quiet when I said that. How many of you are noodling on the idea that you will feel meaning in your life when you're doing things compatible with your biology, meaning the best parts of your biology, which is to promote humankind? That's the best part of your biology, right? Now, it's a very practical definition, isn't it? And the beauty is you can tell when you're doing it. You know if you're doing it. If you're in college, let me ask you this. How many people who went to college while they were in college, and let's say it's somebody who thought a college education was useful, did you feel that that you weren't compatible with the meaning of life when you were in college, if you went to college? I'll bet you thought it was, and I think you were. Now, if you had a silly major and you didn't know where you're going, then maybe you were disconnected. But if you were the kind of serious student who was going to get, B's or better, and you thought college was useful, didn't it make you feel like you were compatible with your biological self? Because I think that when you're learning, and specifically learning things that could have a future value to the tribe, when you're learning things that would be valuable to the tribe, I think you're completely tapped into the meaning of life. Even though, as a student, you're producing no value. You're just using resources. But you still feel that you're on the right track because you got to learn this stuff before you can add value. So if you're anywhere on that chain of cause and effect that will get you to be a tribal elder, I'll bet you'll feel the meaning of life. In fact, that's the best way to think of it. If you want to simplify it, if you want to simplify everything, ask yourself if you're on a path to become a useful tribal elder. Now, let's say you're 25 and you're not working out and you're not eating right and you're just ballooning up. Are you on the path to be a successful tribal elder? You are not, because you'll be dead. You won't even make it to elder because you're going to eat yourself to death, die of obesity or something. So every time you find any action that you're doing that would make it less likely that you will ever become a tribal elder who is useful, then probably you're not finding the meaning of life. I'm dying of abuse. Are you really? April, you have some cryptic messages there, and I'm concerned about your well-being. All right, so do I feel like I am compatible with my biological imperative right now? Absolutely. When I'm doing this, like specifically this, when I'm doing this, I feel absolutely where I belong. Because what I do, specifically, is try to help you think better, differently, have different frames on things. And I think that's really useful. And it could actually help humanity reproduce. So, all right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of this program. I'm pretty sure it's the best thing you've ever experienced today. And that's all I have today. You're lucky we don't all strive for that. Sundays are the best live streams? I don't know, are they? Because I don't talk about the news as much. There's not as much news. How does it work to use evolution and simulation theory as filters at the same time? I do it because the simulation seems to make it look like evolution is real. So you have to deal with the simulation as if it's real. So that they're not incompatible at all. All right. That is all for now. I'll talk to you later. Bye, YouTube and Spotify and all those on audio.